having a pretty incredible reverence when it happens, because it always does, is that every single one who goes to the desert has a breakdown, or like to break through. I always say to break down, to break through. It's not supposed to. This is not supposed to torture you, but it is supposed to break you down. It's supposed to wear you down. Desert spirituality and the invitations, when you actually go and live in the desert for a consistent period of time, there needs to be a break.
Poco a poco vamos a llegar. Somos peregrinos and you know that's who we are. We make our way. Hey, hey.
Hey, I'm Father PT.
And I'm Father Innocent. And this is Father Mark Mary.
Hi.
He's in a bad mood.
Who's in a bad mood?
I'm just kidding.
Who's hangry?
I am not in a bad mood.
No, I was just kidding. I was told that was...
Why would you say that on the podcast? That is so...
Guys. Let's just have some peace here. I didn't know what that was.
Here's I have a number of things here. The first one is...
Please.
He's the Sultan of Silence. Mm. Do you have a thing?
I don't think so.
Or he's like the master formator. Mm-hmm. A name for Father Angelus because he was like the Jubilee boy. Like the last episode, he had the whole Jubilee thing.
I really like that, the Jubilee boy.
Is that? But I feel like it needs to have some like
alliteration or something.
Yeah, we could just call him Jubilee boy.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, he calls everybody that though. Like the boy, he'll put like, "Hey," like guys are making,
yeah,
like. Not the Jubilee boy, but like he'll put boy at the end of it, like, hey.
Jumping Jubilee, I don't know.
But it was kind of his thing, and that Father Innocent's kind of trying to get in.
I'm just trying to live this Jubilee to the full, and I feel deeply about it. And I just, there's a lot of grace for us, boys.
There's an expression, like, don't pedal my bicycle. Don't pedal Father Angelus's bicycle is a Jubilee. Don't be pedaling his bicycle, all right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's messed up.
Pedal your Bible.
So
I think you have a number of things for us.
I do. Here's something.
Let's keep moving. Let's kind of push through.
This is just a small little thing that you guys have been really patient about and really sacrificial and kind of been practicing this whole fasting thing by not bringing it up and asking about. But the high school football season has ended, and you can all have peace now knowing that Mater Dei was the national champion. Undefeated, undisputed national champion.
Thank you.
Way to go.
Are you going to go back and
go
talk
Monarchs.
there? I heard you're going to go back and talk
I am
there.
going to go. I got invited to go talk there.
Really? To the football team?
Never before.
I actually want to ask you about that.
Okay.
Never before.
Never before. I don't really do high school stuff. I might be talking to the whole high school.
Okay.
What do I talk to them about?
Sports, Mater Dei.
Mater Dei. You guys are awesome. You know what you don't do is try and say why you're cool.
No, you never do that.
His brother did that once.
Oh no.
Where?
Santa Margarita. We're out in California. Yeah, I'm cool. There's something like that. It's like, nope.
Once that happens, is tuning out.
Yeah. Lastly is this. I brought this up with lay people. They didn't get it. I brought this up with Dominicans. They not only got it, they'd already come to this conclusion on their own. The idea is this: religious life is homeschool for adults. Religious life is just homeschooling for adults.
I could see that. But not all homeschools are equal.
Neither are all religious orders equal. Next point.
Okay, Dwight Schrute.
I don't know what that.
I'm sorry.
I kind of know what that means, but I don't totally know what that means.
Like, anyway, it's from The Office. Dwight has like a very particular way of talking, and that's the way he would say that.
Okay.
Yeah. But to say,
Are you going to say more, or
Yeah.
Are you going to say more?
Well,
I'm
it
just
sounds
trying
like
to
he
keep
has
this
something to
going.
say.
well, no, I was just commenting. I was just trying to be participatory. Anyway, I was trying to participate in here, but please say more, and I will fill in whatever.
First of all, we have to be clear. This is not in any way intended to be disparaging at all towards homeschooling, insofar as we have all chosen religious life, which we are comparing it to. So it's like we're chosen this as a good thing. You know, like in homeschool, it's a good thing that many people choose for. I'll say this: it is something that is not the norm. So it's a minority life experience, which right. And so you're going to have a unique life experience where most other kids are going to have certain experiences that just by the nature of being homeschooled, you're not going to have. But there's also in many such situations, like I'm not going to not all homeschools are equal. Right. I'm not going to say all are equally as healthy. I'm sure there are many that are healthy and good. But in like religious life, we all sort of left normal adultness at the age of 23 or 24 or 22. And so there's like the vast majority of people who are our age have a lot of the same life experiences that we are never going to have.
Right.
And so there's certain areas where we're just a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that made this come to mind, for example, are I invited myself over to a family's house for Thanksgiving. That's not the weird part, but it's like if you're a normal person in the world and you're going over to someone's house for Thanksgiving, especially if you invite yourself, you're bringing something.
Yeah,
you're bringing something probably nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like we just never did that.
Mm-hmm.
We're like Franciscans, so I was like, what do I do here?
Mm-hmm.
So I brought like books or whatever, or tipping.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're just in the world and you're going to restaurants and doing all that sort of stuff, like you just know tipping etiquette and culture. We just don't ever do that. So I've just been in some situations where like I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Or, whatever it is, like 401ks and retirement and mortgages. That's just not something
taxes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like there's just some areas where it's like if I was a normal adult, if I was a typical path adult,
yeah,
I would have this experience. But I mentioned the Dominicans when I was on their podcast, and one of them was like, yeah, because he teaches at their house of studies. He's like, yeah, I call it whatever it is, something homeschool of Washington, D.C.
Yeah. No,
I think it's funny.
It is funny. I'm not sorry. Hold on one second. Let's see. People are laughing.
It's long.
It is
because it was really funny.
But also too, I guess my whole thing of, well, not religious orders aren't the same too. It's just like homeschooling. Families are different. Like you could be part of, anyways, just different parts of, or different ways you could homeschool, and so, and we all have different flavors, Dominicans are very different than Franciscans and very different from Jesuits and very different from fill in the blank. And so I like it though. I think it fits. And just even to the whole thing of like what, I don't want to say normal adults do, but what people our age who would be accustomed to doing. What's one thing recently? Oh no, so maybe this is something to, I don't know if this happens for you guys, maybe it's just a me thing, but my parents treat me differently. You know what I mean? Because like I left the house at 22 and like they still, or maybe the relationship with the parents is different, where I still have to ask for things and like they still buy me stuff and it feels like in a sense I'm still a child.
Yeah.
Still being cared for in that way. Where a normal 38-year-old man is not going to call mom up and say, hey, look, can you send me some socks?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so even some of those things where, it's just interesting. Go ahead.
Maybe if you didn't just wear your socks around the house as much, you wouldn't need as many socks.
You know what's funny? I didn't even intend to bring up socks.
Did you have anything you want to add? It doesn't seem like your favorite type of conversation.
Well, give that away.
You're the one who you teach a homeschool here.
No, I know, but that's why I agree with you. I was just really trying to think of concrete examples. Yeah. I think it's interesting because the only thing I have to add is I agree with you. And
that's one.
That's
so the second thing you have to add. Sorry.
Shut up. It's just interesting because like our formation programs are like very different in seminary because it's like life, like religious life is life. We're a family, we do stuff together. So formation takes place in that context where you go to seminary, it doesn't pretend to be like your family. It's like, and I'm a recovering seminarian, sorry, but sometimes it's hard because it can be institutional or like it. So it's interesting. Like I think religious life gets that part because everything is done in context of real life. And we don't in like formation programs or these things are happen in like our families. Like we live together. This is what we do, right? So it gives it that feel of being a homeschool where like all this stuff is like a school of life that's happening in real time. We don't like farm it out to like other programs. It happens in real life. So that's what I think.
Nice. And the whole thing of work and home life can blend sometimes. You could take certain days off. It's like a certain freedom with homeschool families, right? And there's a certain freedom, I think, sometimes with religious families too, or religious institutes. And so I like it. I
like that freedom.
We're just homeschooling for adults.
That's it.
So were you homeschooled?
Was I homeschooled? No, I was not.
You are homeschooled.
You said, was I?
Right. Well, I mean,
but
were you apostolate?
Yes.
I was just saying, maybe we need to relook at how we answered those questions.
But when you ask the question, were you homeschooled? The immediate assumption is talking about actual.
All right, this is where I sit
school at
back and
home.
disengage.
So
Okay, we can carry on.
Please.
Anyway, I just because I've traveled a little bit, stayed in some hotels, and they like leave now like an envelope. Like even at Seek, they leave an envelope. Like, do you want to tip here? I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I was like, I didn't do it. Sorry if that's bad. Also, one of our brothers had hip replacement surgery, and so I took him down there, and like you had to park for 3 hours. It's $55.
Dang.
And you can see where the guy parked the car because he knew we were coming out. So it's like, I don't know, 22 feet that direction.
Yeah.
And he just went over there and pulled it up. And he walked out like kind of like with his hand out, like for the tip. And I didn't give him a tip.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, man. I just paid $55 for parking for 3 hours, and you moved the car right there. I don't know how the economics of this work. You know what I mean? I get it. Maybe you're on tips, but I didn't tip the guy. Would you tip the guy?
Probably not, to be honest with you. 100%. Anyway, yeah, I would not.
Okay.
That's where I'm at.
I didn't. But these are the things that I feel like we would know.
And there probably is like a right answer to this, but just where we're at, it's different.
Yeah. Anyway. Also, there's the last little thing. I think it's interesting how I get how these are different economies and stuff. So I get that there's a part that I don't get. But there's like the nurse who like puts on the patient's socks and who like so when you don't tip her.
No.
Who like, you know, does all this stuff to check you out and like, you know, gets the area prepped for surgery. You don't tip that person. The guy who cuts you open, gives you a new hip. You don't tip that person. But the guy who got your car from 10 feet, you gotta tip that guy? I'm like, I don't know how this works.
He's on this, like he's feeling some type of way about this right now.
I get there's things I don't get, but it's just funny. It's like
the guy who cuts you open and throws a hip in you. You know, you don't give him money, but you give the guy who moves your car 10 feet.
Right?
Like
just interesting.
Smoking a cigarette on the corner.
How it all works.
Angry with the boys. But I get you.
I get doctors get paid in other ways. All right.
Sultan of Silence. What's your name again? Sultan of Silence? Sultan of SWAT?
Brother, boring.
I'm going to take this episode to think about Jubilee. What his name could be.
All right. Well, so anyway, we're doing, starting next episode, we are getting into Jesus and the Jubilee by Dr. Bergsma.
Please continue.
I guarantee I know the joke.
That's alliteration at its best.
It is.
Maybe
Please.
not. I don't. Maybe. So Father Innocent.
Yes. Let me go ahead and move up to the microphone.
Please.
You may not have a great time with tipping or homeschooling enjoyable conversations, but what you do know, you weren't homeschooled. You were desert schooled.
Wow. Cool.
That was not actually a moment. We're trying to build you up.
Teach us. So as we're going into the desert and for Lent, as you're actually in the desert without me.
For the first time in a while.
Without me too. For every time.
You weren't invited?
Wow. Okay.
Tell us just a little bit about like how this, just a little bit of the desert spirituality, and particularly in a way that could be helpful for us as we go into Lent.
Yeah, and maybe just to just for our new listeners who maybe don't know like what my connection with the desert is and why I feel deeply about it. It is actually pretty simple. It's something I kind of inherited, but also I think the Lord kind of anointed along the way. But 7 years ago, when I became the postulant formator, there was a lot of things that were that I kind of inherited or like, hey, this is how we've kind of done things. I remember meeting with the old postulant director, and one of the last things he said was, oh, by the way, there's just been this idea of like trying to do some like more kind of masculine formation and maybe taking guys outdoors to the mountains and kind of going backpacking and just doing like more of a man camp kind of thing. It's super simple. They had done some hiking trips before, but there's just a value in masculine formation, like getting outside, getting like doing difficult things, the challenges, the lack of comfort, the team building, going somewhere beautiful like the mountains, the desert, things like that. So there was just like very simple, like, hey, we thought about doing this. And so, so what kind of happened there was I kind of went to prayer, but also I started talking to the brothers and started talking to the community about like, if there is an invitation.
Sorry, dude. Can you kick him out of homeschool class?
bro, this man to my left is more worried about Brother Father Andres' name and finding some alliteration.
See that?
I totally saw that.
I'm listening.
Bro.
So we're in desert.
We are in the desert. So, okay.
On the other side, did you already see it? Was that what you already had?
No.
Okay. You guys are ridiculous.
Sorry.
You guys are ridiculous. I can't. What am I supposed to do here?
So we're in the desert.
Okay, we're going back for a desert. Pardon my brothers. That was a good laugh, Father Mark.
It was funny.
Okay, so my whole thing is that starting to pray about it, starting to ask brothers for the creative ways to do formation. This became a thing. Like, why don't we try going to the desert? We are friends at Core, a Catholic Outdoor Renewal. They're at Wyoming Catholic College. They make it so easy, and everything they do for you, the invitation and it's so easy to do this. So we did it. I just got done with my 5th year doing it. We missed the year of COVID, and then last year we couldn't go for a variety of different reasons. But guys, it was just a desire to kind of bless our young men in a real invitation to step into something new that could really bless them and challenge them spiritually and humanly. And again, there's so many stories, and the reason why I'm hesitating a little bit is because you've heard us talk about on this podcast, like refer back to a whole Lenten series on this. You've heard us say a lot of these things, tell a lot of stories, but it's beautiful every Lent to kind of just remind ourselves, like, why the desert? Why is it important? And why do I go there for 3 weeks for every year to go deeper with our men and go deeper with the Lord? And the simple way that it just on my heart to tell us today is that what we want to pay attention to going to the desert is a real biblical invitation. It's not just because like, oh, we like it, or there's challenges, or there's all these practical things why it might be fun. Okay, praise God. But we have to go back to the real biblical invitation that the deserts mean something for God, right? And so I've always tried to like instill that in our guys. Like, guys, we're not just going to desert to do hard things and to have like some sort of like adventure. We are doing something, and God is calling us to the desert because deserts are important to God. You look at salvation history, especially, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but especially at the life of Jesus, there was a significant moments, but one particularly his own Lent, where the Father drew him into the desert, and it was a very particular, holy, anointed time. And we can learn about a lot about the life of Jesus, his own sonship, and his own experience of the Father, and his own experience of his mission. If we understand that we go to the desert with Jesus, we understand the meaning of the desert with Jesus. It's just beautiful. It's biblical to understand that the desert's a place that is holy and terrifying and purifying, and it always blesses, it always transforms. And that's what God has done since the beginning of his chosen people, and that's what he did in Jesus, and that's what I think he does in our lives. So we start by understanding that deserts are holy places that God uses, and there's always a human invitation and always a spiritual invitation, and we hold them together as we go into the desert. I'm happy to talk more about those, but that's kind of where I'm going, the human and the spiritual invitation. But I just think it's really important that we don't do this in the abstract idea. We do it because Jesus did it, and desert's important to God.
You say we, meaning the postulants, or like us in general?
I say me and the postulants and the focus of this podcast.
Just in the sense of, because I do think we collectively, all of us go into the desert during Lent, right? That's a part of the spirit of it. But we don't go alone. Right, we go with Jesus, and just struck once again with the fact that, like, obviously it's for relationship, at the service of relationship, but we go because Jesus has gone there himself, but also too, it's a place of encounter. The desert is always a place of you're being stripped. You're down to basically, once again, the vulnerability of your own heart. It's scary. You have to rely on the Lord in a real way. And just looking quickly, there's so many times in the gospel. So right, there's the time where Jesus goes to the desert specifically. He's pushed by the Spirit, encounters the Lord there by fasting for 40 days, stands against the tempter, and pronounces basically who he is as his son. But there's so many times in the gospel of Luke where Jesus goes off to a deserted place. And I like to imagine like that as like a desert place,
Yeah.
right? We also too, just in the Gospel of Mark, after the healing of Peter's mother, he, people are coming to him, and he goes off to a lonely place, a deserted place. When he's talking to the 5,000, he had compassion on them because when he does the miracle of the loaves, it's in a deserted place, and he tells the disciples to go and to find food for them. And so just to say that the desert is also a place of encounter where Jesus escapes to the desert in these places to talk to his Father, to be alone with the one who loves him. But also too, specifically with the 5,000, this desert is a place where he can provide food for us, where he can provide himself for us, especially if we go there and allow him just to see us as we are. And we do this once again for relationship, even though the desert can bring up things that are difficult or just bring us to this place of recognizing our limitations and recognizing just even how small we are or just how needy we are based off of different things that we have that aren't there, meaning the comforts of a shower, air conditioning, like whatever it is, but once again, just to kind of highlight that.
Yeah. And
sorry if I stepped ahead of what we're going to talk about.
no, you didn't step ahead at all.
Okay.
I just want to put fire there. Like I think relationship is one of the absolute emphasis, right? Because I think we can make Jesus's time in the desert about a lot of things. And I think we will like parse them out, or like at least we can. But let's not forget that like Jesus he doesn't go alone, but it's actually to be with his Father. Like it's always, he doesn't go, it's always the move. He goes to the deserted place. He goes into the desert. He goes to pray. Right. And so it's just like, it's absolutely about the Father. It's absolutely about like a pure contact with his Father. Right. And I heard a priest once say really beautifully that in the desert spirituality, we can get a sense that it's like intense and that Jesus was in desolation. There's one priest who's a biblical commentator. He says, I don't think Jesus in the desert, at least the 40 days, I don't think he was in desolation at all. Like it was the purity of being with his Father. And yeah, he was tempted, but he stayed and he chose the truth about who he was, and he rejoiced in his Father. Right. And he'll add the agony in the garden, and that's where the desolation comes in. It's like a similar experience. So that was just to say, like he was commenting on the desert and the agony being two primary different experiences, but the one in the desert is more of like this clinging, this fighting for, this rejoicing in his Father and in the gift of who he is as Son. And is it hard? Yes. Was he hungry? Yes. But it's more this experience that's full and rejoicing. And I just appreciated that, because sometimes we can be like, oh, how difficult it must have been. But Jesus knew himself to be the beloved Son. He knew himself to have such a good Father. And even in the midst of temptations of the enemy, he just like, he stays and proclaims and fights for it. And it's beautiful. So I just wanted, the primacy relationship is actually the whole thrust of the thing. And I don't want to repeat myself from the last episode, but one thing that I'm struck by is that like when we go to the desert, there's a potency to like the bareness and the stripping. Father Mark, Mary, you remember that a big part of my invitation to guys in the desert that there are very little comforts in the desert. That's the whole point. There are very little human comforts. And a part of it is we start stripping those things away. And so getting up and having Mass and Holy Hour outside in the beauty of creation, but it's like 10 degrees. Like, okay, now prayer's not even comfortable. Like I'm settling into this place where any human comfort is being checked. Just a funny story. Like this is just natural when we face uncomfortability. There's just always ways it like seeps back in, and they're small and subtle, but that we just had this thing going where we'd have Mass and Holy Hour, then coffee and stuff after. Little by little, and Father Mark Mary is the one who saw this. He's like, little by little, guys were getting up earlier and warming up water and wanting like the nice coffee before. And like, they're like value packs. So you have coffee, creamer, and sugar in one thing. It's like, oh, this is kind of nice. And guys were commenting, they were like settling in. They're like, oh, this is like nice. And it makes it bearable. And you just started to see it kind of trickle. And you're like, and Father Mark Mary's one he saw, he's like, I don't know if that's what we're going for. Where we had something hard, we have to get up, it's dark, we have to have Mass and Holy Hour, we need to start backpacking or whatever. and guys were like grasping at some sort of comfort. Well, we leaned in and we pressed in and said, we're not going to do that. We're gonna get up, we're gonna go to mass, have holy hour, and we're not gonna try to like fill the space, or fill the comfort or the challenge. So I remember it's just super funny. Like guys, we like pressed in and said we're actually not going to have it until after. And when we have with breakfast, we're not going to like do extra warm up of coffee. And I think guys definitely got it, but that's like just a small story of like, we're actually leaning into being uncomfortable or emptied or purified in these areas, because it just makes it so much more potent that we have no human stuff, very little human stuff to rely on. No warm showers, it's like the same food over and over and over again. It's heavy weight, like just weight. If you're backpacking, there's 60 to 70 pounds on your back, and it's the same thing every day, and getting up and like whatever the weather is. And you're with the same people. There's no alone time. Like you just keep pressing into anything that could bring you comfort or consolation. And brothers, if we do it right and we surrender ourselves to it, there's a potency. We're like malleable. And so then when God comes, I think, and it's been my experience, that beautiful things can happen because things have been cleared. Our egos have been cleared. We've been humbled. We've let go. And you start to see God meet us. It like becomes a meeting place for God to come to us in a new way.
And this is kind of like where I was coming from, and I'm grateful we went there, is one thing that I think is interesting is if you look at like sort of the more contemplative way of life is in the church, the more penitential it is. So think of like Carthusians who are kind of out there. They're a lot of silence, a lot of prayer. But they're often, right, they're not going to have a ton of sleep. They're waking up and doing vigils. It's often cold. They're not necessarily eating great. I think they might have very, very minimal meat. And it's just like, it's interesting. Okay, this is a common trend, and it's a common trend throughout, essentially our 2,000 years of some sort of monastic tradition or desert spirituality. But why, so it's like, okay, so why actually, if the people who are contemplative and the most contemplative, why isn't there any that's like very, very comfortable? And, these people who are praying 14 hours a day have very, very like nice and warm cells, and very, very like the chapel's always nice and warm, and they're eating really well. Because doesn't this seem like this would all really serve their lives of prayer? But there's something in the wisdom of the church and the tradition of the spirituality, and I would call it maybe a monastic or desert spirituality, where it's like, no, actually, there's something about the poverty and the lack of comfort, which is actually the ideal setting for sort of maybe soil for prayer. And we're in the winter here, and again, I'm like not tough, but I guess I am like principled, and I'm formed by this. Is like I remember that the experience of the guy in the desert who's just like really struggling with the morning prayer time because it's cold, and your kind of response to that, and just hearing like some of the guys who maybe haven't gone through that, who really want. In the friary, like we usually keep the thermostat pretty low, and I think it's a penance thing, but it's a poverty thing. It's like, well, how about the chapel? Can we at least make the chapel warm? Or I want the chapel to be like warm and inviting. And I've heard them like, I get where you're coming from, but also like maybe that's not actually the right way. Maybe that's just not consistent with like this whole like desert spirituality and monastic spirituality and in our life of whatever of prayer and penance. I just do think like there's that. I just remember that so distinctly from your formation. It's like, yeah, we could wake up in the morning. We can spend some time to like just wake up, allow the sun to rise a little bit, have coffee, maybe have something to eat, get warm, and find a nice sunny spot, and then we can have mass. We can have holy hour, and it's going to be like comfortable, and you're going to really be able to like enter into prayer. But there's something about that which is like, no, that's not the point. There's something about you coming and being dependent and being poor and having the Lord come, which is like the point of this.
I just want to I want to bless that in a part of this trip. Again, you'll hear this. I'm doing this before I've gone, but we're changing spots. So we're moving from Utah to Arizona. And so just part of the question is like, again, that we've added new challenges because we believe this recipe works. But it's like the tricky thing is like, oh man, but Lord, like there's something about the cold that's challenging. And so, it's, the weather is a thing, but again, we're trusting that the Lord is going to just like use all of it, but they're significant challenges. But Father Mark Mary, what the challenges do that are really important. And I joke about this and the guys do as well. And I have a pretty incredible reverence when it happens, because it always does, is that every single one who goes to the desert has a breakdown, or why, like to break through. I always say to break down, to break through. It's not supposed to, this is not supposed to torture you. And it doesn't have to be crazy, because when you think about mental breakdowns, that's not what I'm talking about at all. But it is supposed to break you down. It's supposed to wear you down. Desert spirituality and the invitations, when you actually go and live in the desert for a consistent period of time, there needs to be a break. And that's why, like, it's hard to explain. And those who know me, I'm like I'm an intense guy, but but I just like really love people. So it's not like it's not just for the sake of torturing people.
You're not cold.
I'm not cold. But the point is that I think no matter if you ever go to the desert or not, like I think what Lent is supposed to do, or desert spirituality is supposed to do, is bring you to the point where you admit defeat. I actually can't do this. And I believe that in any type of formation, you actually need to feel that in your body. Like we are bodies. We're not just pure spirits. Like, and we are bodies who have limitations, and we feel stuff deeply. I feel hunger. I feel cold. I feel pain. I feel fear. I feel anxiety. Yes, all of that, because Jesus comes to redeem all that. That's what he does. He takes it all upon himself. But if we don't feel those things, then we can never cry out for him. And we don't get to the end of the line. And if there's any human power left or self-reliance left, then it's difficult for Jesus to come and do what he wants to do. So we take people to the desert because we start hacking away or chipping away at the self-reliance and the self-focus and the pride, the ego, all the things we turn to. And then it doesn't, I don't think it might take a while, but like it starts to happen pretty quick without comforts and out all the things we turn to, where people start recognizing that they're significantly limited, that I actually don't have what it takes, that I actually don't have enough patience, enough love to deal with this guy in my tent. I just can't do it. And then like what happens and how people respond. And it's usually there's a lot of ruptures. Like personalities start rubbing. And that's where guys face the limitations. Sometimes it's fear, like when they're going to rappel down a mountain, or sometimes it's just mere physical exhaustion. Like I haven't slept well, I haven't prayed well, and we're only in day 5 and you have a long way to go. And so guys face their limitations, and that's the point. And the funny thing is I told Father Mark Mary as these things are going on, like I celebrate these things. I watch them. I'm like, okay, it's happening. Here it is. Like, and then obviously we care for people in this context, but that's the point, and that's what needs to happen. But we have to let it. I think we have to surrender to it. I just think it's a really important part of it.
I think, yeah, just as it's how the Lord not drew up the game plan, but it happened to the Israelites, right? They were in Egypt and they went for 40 years in the desert, and it was a formative experience for them. I don't think, okay, so they were in slavery, but even though they were in slavery, the reason why they went out to the desert, the Lord called them there, and so he could just win their hearts back to him. And they just had to go through difficulties, right? Because anyway, they at one point complained about, man, the flesh pots are really good back in Egypt. But you were a slave. You know what I mean? You weren't free. Like, why are you complaining about the flesh pots? Or, just even to having come out, they create this golden calf to say, this is actually what brought us out. Like, no. Like, you walk through water. Like, the Lord did that. And so just to say, the Lord allows the desert experience to form our hearts in a new way, to recognize that, okay, the idols from the past, or the things that you find as comforts, we're going to put those away. And I'm going to provide for you. Specifically manna from the desert, or manna that grows up from the desert, or water from the rock, or even to birds that birds that just die and you're able to eat them. Like, okay. And just recognize, like, okay, first of all, my Father does care for me, and I actually don't have to rely on those things in the past that I thought were comforts, even though I was enslaved. because I think there is something too where we just grow used to certain things, and this is how it has to be for me to feel the comfort. Like I have to be in a warm chapel to pray, or I have to, have this sort of experience in order to encounter the Lord. But he can bring you to a place that's super uncomfortable, and actually you're relying more on him as opposed to that thing that you thought is facilitating the experience with God, when it's just his heart that he wants to give you, and just the place of, hey, we're putting those things away. I want to, and this is Hosea, like I called you out to the desert to speak to you anew. And this is what's happening, specifically the formative experience with you, but also in Lent, that could happen for us too, to go into the desert with the Lord and just to, okay, Lord, like what are the idols I have to put aside? Like what are the things that I find comfortable that maybe aren't actually speaking to me, aren't speaking of your relationship with me? And how can I not long for that, but just long for you in this place?
Yeah. One of the guys said recently before we went, I said, hey, bro, what are you most afraid of? And he said, Father, I'm most afraid of like breaking or being needy. Like I'm afraid of like maybe like hurting my leg or spraining my ankle, and then the brothers would have to carry me. Like that terrifies me. And I was like, bro, that's like, it's just insightful. Like we want to be we want to do it ourselves, self-reliant. Like I don't want to need anybody. I want to be the guy to help. Like Father Mark, Mary, remember that year I think it was your first year, we had the 2 ankle sprains, and it was pretty early on, and guys had to empty their bags and spread the weight out, and we like inched along, right? Like we fought for every inch of that because guys could only like walk like that. That was really significant because those guys were like really talented, and then now they can't do anything, right? I think the Lord wants us to experience that like I actually incredibly needy, going out in utter dependence and utter poverty, like Jesus going into the desert. He chose not to eat. He needed to be cared for and fed. And like, it was utter poverty and dependence, and the Father came, right? So anyway, it's just interesting to name what we're afraid of. Like, what does the desert like press in us? And it could be we could say a lot of different things. But I think to not be afraid of like, wow, like when I do hard things, I'm just afraid, or like self-reliance or pride. Like when all that goes, like what do I have? And this is the meeting place where the Father wants to come meet us.
Because also too, I mean, right, the burning bushes in the desert, this place of encounter. But also too, just with the Israelites, once again, there was a lot of murmuring amongst themselves. And I don't want this to happen. In the name of Jesus, we don't invite this, but like the Lord had to send the serpent to bite the people, right?
Bro, that's actually possible.
That's what I'm saying. In the name of Jesus, we don't want this to happen. But
shoot it.
Shoot the serpent.
What's the one that's like?
There you go. But once again, there, like even the interpersonal dialogues that happen, there's just more that the Lord sees in the hearts of us that he wants to correct, that he wants to make his own, that he wants to bring us to a place of uncomfortability so we can be comfortable in the uncomfortable, right? I think it's a thing that the Lord desires for that to happen, because we no longer rest in the things, but we rest in him and how he's called us to be in this place. And so just wanted to, it's more so to bring up the serpent thing too.
Great. I'm just going to share how I got sidetracked.
It's okay.
This is equally attacking both of you. When do you use discomfort versus uncomfort? Is uncomfort a word? Uncomfortability? Discomfort?
Well, I just say like people say
I'm uncomfortable. So I think they're both the words.
Yeah, so that's where I was getting it from. If I said it, I'm sorry.
Discomfort.
I'm trying to think when uncomfortable. So,
did I use discomfort? Did one of us use discomfort?
No, both of you use a variety of uncomfortable and uncomfortability.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, I guess it is. Sounds like it. I'm uncomfortable is something people say.
You make me feel
I
uncomfortable.
experience discomfort right now. Are you feeling uncomfortability?
I'm feeling discomfort. Maybe that's the proper thing.
I think they're both fair game. Thank you for that.
Somebody will let us know.
But so I think, where this can, to expand this is right. Like, I think part of the desert spirituality is right. And it's just, I think, recognizing that there are certain deserts that we freely go into, and there's the deserts that we just experience of life. And that there's often a similarly, like, okay, hey, I'm in the chapel, I'm trying to pray and it's cold and I'm tired and I haven't had coffee. Like there's a way of like worldly looking at that as seeing those all as obstacles to God doing what he wants to do. And it can be kind of discouraging. There can be a lot of life experiences where things are hard, or I'm distracted, or I'm feeling this pressure or that pressure or ailment or whatever. And there's a view of that that's like, okay, these are all obstacles that need to be solved because they're getting in the way of me experiencing God. And I think the good news of desert spirituality that we kind of tap into with intentionality in Lent is the good news that is the place where God comes to us and embraces us and speaks tenderly to us, like most purely and most beautifully. And that if like experiencing this well in Lent, particularly with some of the things that we have control of, hopefully it overflows into a grace and a hope and encouragement and a re-looking at the deserts of our life that we don't have control over and that we often judge as being obstacles to God's most perfect work being done in our lives. And I think that's part of the good news of this whole thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just really struck that, it's supposed to be hard.
Okay.
The desert is, and so it's supposed to be hard, but like that's like the attraction, like that's kind of like where, like like things being easy. It's just, you were talking about, like, it's just ironic that sometimes we think of warmer chapel, but this invitation is like actually where God wants to come. Like this is where he comes. And so it just transforms our whole understanding of it and experience of it. PT, I was struck too by just the fact that we don't go into the desert by ourselves. We don't go into the desert just for like some sort of spiritual Olympics, but the desert is where the burning bush was, but it's where the meeting tent was. It was where the pillar of fire and the cloud were. Like it is like God's presence. Like, and so that's just super important, is that it's in the raw encounter. And this is just exactly where he wants to meet us. It's in these places that we don't have to be afraid of. And so it might seem ironic, but like it's actually in the pain, the suffering. And some of this stuff, like you said, Father Mark Mary, is already kind of built in, but could we see it anew and it becomes like an encounter or a meeting place in the desert, even if it's the desert of our hearts or purification. It could just be like, if we could just have the shift and see it in a new way, then we don't have to like flee from the deserts, but it could just be a beautiful, difficult invitation to go deeper.
Mm-hmm. I just have here Hosea 2:14. Therefore, behold, I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. And I made a note of here. I don't know where this came from, but it sounds good. The punishment becomes the remedy in God's way. In the sense of, like, once again, there's difficult things in our life or difficult things, and we could look at it somehow as a punishment or just something like it. Anyway, it's not fun to go to the desert. It's not fun to be uncomfortable. It's difficult. It's hard. But maybe this is the way in which, once again, the Lord desires to bring us back. And we may want him to speak more tenderly to us, and he does. But it is through wading into difficult things and just, okay, Lord, I trust you, and I know this is hard, but trying to create a space or trying to at least hear his voice in that place of desert, I think is how the Lord desires at times to speak to us. And once again, this is not like we're doing this during the context of Lent, during the context of like a particular season. And so I think there are seasons in our life that can be desert-like, but specifically now we're blessed with like the church season, and so there is grace, real grace is poured out during this time to kind of go to that place and to allow him to speak tenderly to us. You have a face. It's quizzical.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
I gotta fix that. What I'm trying to, okay, I'll just say the thing. Like the word kind of it's being spoken is, to me at least, is like, what if we come to our approach to, we're going to go back to the chapel, is I've come here to die. And because that's certainly part of the spirit, but like, so, right. It's not just to die for death's sake. It's not hard for hard's sake. Like it's because I have to die so that, Christ can fully come alive in me. Because, right, like I think often we come to the chapel of like, I have come here to get a warm hug and some hot chocolate and maybe a cookie. Like I'm coming to the chapel like I'm coming to like ideal grandma's house, and not like I'm coming here to die. Right. And so what this looks like is like, this death to self so that Christ can come alive. And like an example that comes to mind is just because we have the experience of praying in common. It's like, okay, that thing that brother's doing is really annoying. And it can feel like, okay, I can't actually pray. I can't really focus because all I can do is hear this thing or see this thing. It's like, well, now if we reframe it like, well, I've come here to die.
Just die, man. Let it happen.
And this is how God is going to, this is how it's going to happen. Maybe it's the death is not, I have to go talk to him, or maybe the death is just.
Bear it.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, anyway, it just touches on, not a wound, but like it's real. Because like oftentimes my heart in that moment when somebody else is doing something in the chapel or even to like just like I'd rather it be different. And anyway, so
somehow that's good for you, bro.
Like I would say this, I'd rather the circumstances be different as opposed to my heart be different.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'd rather just the things around that I can't control that are just people be different and I don't have to change. And that's not good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like, okay, like, and one of the things built into our life, right? Like is we have a holy hour from 5 to 6 o'clock in the evening. That's really like the least ideal time to do a holy hour possible.
Or saying the rosary at 9:30, 9:15
Sure.
at night.
You know,
the worst time to say the rosary.
That's for you.
Shut up.
But because like we have the 2 hours, right? So like in the morning you can go to your cell, there's a little bit more space, whatever. And then we do our Eucharistic holy hour every day at 5 o'clock. Like if those switched, I would feel like it would all be much easier. Mm-hmm. But there's something about it, like the tiredness at that point of the day that actually is part of the gift. But I'd be curious is like, what if I kind of like that. It's like, do you come to the chapel? Do you come to a time of prayer like you're going to grandma's house, or are you coming to die? And it has to be nuanced, and there's seasons, and there's a healthy understanding of all this stuff. But I think it's a good question.
I think you're right on. It actually moves me. I'm actually, again, sorry to confuse our audience, but we're actually getting ready to go to the desert in a couple of weeks. And so tonight I have the first installment of preparation talks. So I'm inspired to use that word, that like the why. And because I do think even in prayer or even in things in our life, we can be like, oh, I want to go to the chapel, or I want this life to be just kind of soft and make me feel good. And I just think of like moms and dads who have children, like you don't have children, you don't like necessarily have children because you like, it makes you feel good all the time. But like you have to lay your life down in love constantly, and you have to die constantly. We have siblings, like it's real. Mm-hmm. Like, so anyway, I just think it's a great invitation. Like this, like we are going to the desert to die, and it has to be nuanced, all that stuff. But there is an intensity to the invitation. And it would be, Father Angel says this great line when he talks about like this going to the desert, you're probably never going to, like 3 weeks, the Pashtuns are probably never going to go again. Like it could be a missed opportunity. You go to the desert, you stay self-protected, you don't open up, you whine. Like whining in the desert, like gets me. Like you just like, you're self-centered, and it can be a missed opportunity. And he always says like, hey, don't make Jesus drag you around the desert. Like Jesus says, no one takes my life. I lay it down. I'm going to give myself to this, and I'm going to die. Right. But you can be dragged through life. You can be dragged through suffering. And I'm not saying it's easy. And I think everybody knows on this podcast, all of us have a deep reverence for people in their struggle. Mm-hmm. But I do feel deeply that there's an invitation here. We don't just have to bear it. Jesus desires to use the desert or use suffering for the sake of intimacy. Mm.
Just gotta do it, man. I'm just because one of the nice things about the desert is like you're there, and it's like, well, I can either just cry the whole time, or I can enter into it. It's like when we're going to the chapel in our own hearts, there's just a lot more space for like just holding back and holding on to self-will. And
I shared this story at Seek to the guys talk. I won't say the friar's name, but I was playing basketball with the friar. And he,
So me.
it was not you. It was not Father Mary. But he kind of just stopped in the middle, like had this profound thought, or maybe he's mulling it over. And he says, bro, I recently discovered I'm going to start living. So I wish I'm going to start living as to die. So that way when I die, I'm ready to live. Like once again, focusing on just like things are going to be small deaths in his life. So that way when he dies, he can actually be welcomed into heaven. But I do think there's a part of our life and our hearts that we have to have that perspective. Like, am I living to live and just to be comfortable, or am I living to actually die, in the sense of, once again, it's nuanced, but die to myself, die to those things that I know the Lord maybe wouldn't want to be a part of my life. So that way when I actually do physically die, like I can live forever with him. And the desert helps facilitate this. But once again, it's for the other, specifically Jesus. Is for a relationship. It's for just to experience the Lord's heart for you in these places.
Were you smoking him?
I was.
Was that what inspired? He's like, I'm just going to...
No, I wasn't smoking because of talent. It was just age.
Well, like, he was like, I'm dying over here. And then he's like, okay, God.
I was actually grateful he started talking, because I was a little bit winded at that point. But yeah.
Anything else to add? Desert dude?
Good alliteration.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind closing us with another prayer?
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Father, we adore you and praise you, and we give you absolute permission to draw us to the desert, to be with your Son Jesus, to take away all the obstacles, take away pride, take away self-reliance, take away comfort, that with the full confidence that you intend to give us the gift of your presence in a new way. We just long for intimacy. We long for communion. And we give you full permission to take everything that stands in the way. We ask this all through Christ our Lord.
Amen. I'm really far from living this. That's part of my struggle right now. So I'm going to try and lean into that.
You going to come with me in a couple weeks?
You didn't? No, I can't. I would love to.
I know.
But that would be easier than what I have in mind.
It's true.
You got any shout outs?
No, I don't.
I don't either.
Shout out to Sophia. Long-awaited shout out to Sophia. And I forgot, dang it, I was given a gift of a mug and I forgot it. But it took 540 days to get the mug to me, so I think it's okay. Anything else? Shout out Abiding Together. Good to see you all. And
Michelle, Kim, Sister Miriam.
Did you call her Kim? Heather Kim?
Heather Kim, sorry. My bad.
They're great.
Mm-hmm.
Good things.
Coming threes.
Coming
Threes.
three. Holy Trinity, triplets, Abiding Together podcast.
Could we get a Good Thing Comes in Fours?
When's the next time there's going to be four of us here?
I don't know.
I don't think you're going to be here for the next time we record.
That's why I'm in the desert, yeah. So you have the second half of February to find one to do.
I just pressed the random button.
All right. Don't forget to feed Brother Al.
Really?
What? That's like,
I know, it's funny. I think
the
it's
algorithm.
I know.
Like, subscribe, comment. Well, rate if it's a 5. Comment if it's positive. Share if it's to somebody who's is gonna like it. Anything else?
Nah, that's it.
Thanks, Rob. Spirit juice.
Thanks, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.
Thanks, Dominique.
Poco a poco vamos a llegar. Somos peregrinos and you know that's who we are. We make our way. Hey, hey. Little by little we learn a little more each day that God is love, that life is short, that all will be well. And I know